What's up guys? Golden Knight here. Digital art has a very unique characteristic. It gives you the impression that you are more advanced than you really are. The software has infinite resources. It has free transform. It has brushes that simulate oil texture, watercolor, pencil, everything at the same time. It has filters, it has overlay reference, layers that allow you to correct anything without destroying the rest. This whole structure is incredible when you already have fundamentals. But when you are still building the foundation, it can end up becoming a trap, because it allows you to hide mistakes without forcing you to understand them. What I'm going to show you here is a series of patterns that appear almost all the time in the path of beginner digital artists, and that hold back your progress. Relying too much on undo, flip, and transform. I need to say that this first point is not very relevant for those who only draw digitally and do not care much about other media. But my goal here with the channel always has been and always will be to help people develop as artists in a general way, not just as digital artists. Digital has resources that traditional will never have, and that is a fact. It is neither good nor bad by itself. Unlimited undo, horizontal flip, free transform, liquefy, perspective warp, all these resources exist, are legitimate, and are part of the workflow of professional artists around the world. No serious artist is going to ignore a useful tool as a matter of principle. The problem is not using these resources. The problem is the specific pattern of use that develops when they replace something that can only be built internally: perception, decision, and conscious control of your own stroke. Undo is the clearest example. When you use undo to erase a stroke that came out wrong and try again, that seems completely reasonable, and in a way it even is. But there is a point at which undo stops being a specific correction and starts becoming the main mechanism through which you make decisions. You do not decide before making the stroke, you make the stroke and undo it until something comes out that looks right. This completely reverses the process of developing motor control and visual perception. Because stroke control develops through commitment to the line, through feeling the mistake in the gesture itself and adjusting progressively. When you remove the consequence of the mistake immediately, you also remove the feedback that the mistake should generate. You are practicing making strokes, but you are not practicing deciding before making them. And that difference, over time, is enormous. Horizontal flip is another resource that can be extremely valuable or completely counterproductive depending on how it is used. When you flip to check proportion, identify a specific mistake, and correct it consciously, it is expanding your perception. But when you flip compulsively every 2 minutes without knowing exactly what you are looking for, it becomes an anxiety ritual that does not generate any useful information. The same logic applies to free transform. Using transform to adjust an element that is slightly out of proportion after a conscious evaluation is efficiency. Using transform to stretch and compress elements until the image looks right without understanding why it was wrong is postponing the development of the perception that would allow you to get it right without needing the adjustment. What all these patterns have in common is that they create a relationship with error that is fundamentally different from the one you need to develop in order to grow. In traditional media, the mistake stays. You are forced to look at it, understand what happened, and decide how to move forward with it or despite it. That develops tolerance for error, evaluative ability, and resilience in the process. In digital, the mistake can disappear in a fraction of a second, and that possibility, when it becomes an automatic reflex, prevents the mistake from fulfilling its most important function within learning, which is to teach you something. Using digital resources consciously means knowing when they are helping you see better and when they are helping you not see. This distinction is not small. It is what separates the one who uses the tool from the one who is used by it. The clash between tool and fundamental. There is a very common belief among those who are starting in digital art. The belief that in order to improve as an artist, before anything else, they need the right tool. The right software, the right tablet, the right brushes. The problem is that this logic completely reverses the order of things. What separates an artist who has just started from an artist with years of experience is not the software they use. It is the way they see. It is the ability to look at a three-dimensional form and understand how it behaves on paper. It is knowing where the light hits, how the body's weight is distributed, where perspective creates distortion, how to simplify without losing readability. These things are inside the head of the person drawing, and they were built over hours of intentional study, observation, conscious error, and real correction. When you do not have this foundation yet, changing tools solves nothing. You only take the same problems into a different environment. The digital art market is built on top of selling tools. Brush pack, plugin, software course, tablet upgrade. All of this makes you believe that the next purchase will be exactly what was missing for you to be able to do what you have always wanted. And when you are still at the beginning, without a clear reference of what you really need to develop, it is very easy to believe in that logic. You need to understand that the tool serves the fundamental, and not the other way around. When the fundamental is developing, any reasonable tool works. When the fundamental is weak, no tool in the world will hide that. Skipping steps to make pretty art quickly. When you are starting out and want to produce something that looks like what you see on social media and admire, the natural tendency is to try to reach that stage as quickly as possible. The digital environment makes that possible. You have infinite resources of light, effects, glows, among other things. The problem is that reaching a stage too quickly that you still do not have the foundation to sustain does not move you forward. It traps you in a loop. What happens when you try to render before having a solid form is that you start adding light and shadow on top of a structure that is still not correct, and then neither of those things works. The shadow tries to create volume, but the volume does not exist in the form yet, so the shadow has no logic. You add more detail trying to compensate, and the detail adds visual complexity without adding clarity. The image becomes more and more overloaded and less readable. You feel that you are working a lot, that you are dedicating real time to that drawing, but the result still does not get where you want it to. And the frustration that comes from that is not only emotional. It teaches you the wrong thing. That the problem is your technical execution of rendering, when in fact the problem was much earlier, in the construction of the form. Skipping steps in the process of an image is different from being efficient. Efficiency is knowing which step matters most at that moment and dedicating energy to it. Skipping a step is ignoring an entire phase of the process because it seems visually unrewarding. It seems like the kind of thing beginner artists do. But the construction phase, the structural sketch phase, the phase in which you define silhouette, proportion, composition, and visual hierarchy before any detail, is the phase that professional artists do with more awareness than anything else. The difference is that they do it quickly because they already have experience with that process. And the only way to reach that speed is to have gone through the process slowly first. The confusion between drawing with color and knowing how to use value. Color is one of the first things that attracts people to digital art. That makes sense. Digital offers an infinite palette, millions of shades, color harmony tools, layer modes that mix colors in ways that would be impossible in traditional media. And when you begin to explore all of that, there is a genuine sense of possibility. You experiment with different palettes, test combinations, discover that certain colors together create an interesting visual vibration. This process is not wrong. The problem begins when color takes the center of attention before something much more fundamental is in place: the understanding of value. Value, in the context of drawing, is simply how light or dark an element is in the image. It has nothing to do with color itself. It has to do with the relationship of luminosity between the different parts of the composition. And that relationship is what organizes the reading of an image in a much more decisive way than any chromatic choice. When the values are well distributed, the viewer's eye knows where to go. An image with well-resolved values and mediocre colors is much more readable than an image with vibrant colors and confused values. But because color is more visually immediate, more stimulating, easier to perceive consciously, it ends up dominating the attention of the person who is learning. A good exercise for any artist who is going through this is to convert their own image to grayscale and look at it with no color at all. What you see at that moment is the real value structure of the image, without chromatic distraction. And many times what appears is a set of midtones without clear contrast, without defined hierarchy, without clear separation between the planes. That does not mean the color was wrong. It means it was being used to try to create something that only values can create. Using too much zoom and losing the view of the whole. There is an almost automatic behavior that develops very early in digital art and goes completely unnoticed. You are drawing, you reach a point where you want to refine something, you zoom in on the canvas, work on that detail, zoom out, zoom in again on a different area, work a little more, and keep repeating this cycle throughout the whole session. It seems like you are being careful. It seems like you are dedicating attention to the work. But what is happening underneath this behavior is something very different. You are progressively losing the ability to evaluate the image as a whole and making local decisions that destroy the global coherence without you noticing it while it happens. The problem with excessive zoom is not the zoom itself. It is what it does to your perception over time. When you spend most of the session with the image highly enlarged, your eye adapts to that scale. You start evaluating quality, proportion, and readability from that small crop, and lose the reference of what the image communicates when seen at real size. Then when you finally zoom out, what you often find is an image with technically well-executed details in isolated areas, but with compromised proportion, unbalanced composition, with elements competing with each other in a way that makes no sense at all in the overall view. And the most frustrating part is that every decision that generated this problem seemed correct at the moment it was made, because it was being evaluated at the wrong zoom level. Experienced artists vary the viewing distances while working in a constant and conscious way, because they know that a decision made at zoom level is only valid if it still makes sense when the image is seen from far away. Every detail exists in service of the whole, never the opposite. Try to work most of the time at the zoom level at which the image will be seen, and use close zoom only for occasional and specific interventions, immediately returning to the overall view afterward. In addition, the habit of mirroring the image horizontally frequently forces the eye to see proportion and composition mistakes that familiarity with the image had hidden. These are resources that digital offers and that should be used exactly for that, to expand perception. If this video helped you in any way, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next ones. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. Don't forget to take a look at the description. There are several important links there that can help you even more. See you in the next video.